स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Now, in this video, I'll describe the unique methodology of intuiting the ultimate reality of Brahma. We have so far deliberated upon the possible doorways to knowledge. Now we have to deliberate upon the question of finding out the exact meaning or import of the statement that we get knowledge from the perception of the external objects through our senses, from the thoughts, emotions, feelings, reasoning faculty, and from statements of trustworthy elders or personalities. People are carrying on their day-to-day dealing in the manner because I saw with my eyes, I got the knowledge of the form of an object. Similarly, because I heard with my ears, smelled with my nose, touched with my hands or skin, tasted with my tongue, deliberated upon with my mind, I got the knowledge of such and such an object or phenomenon. But how do we realize or reckon in the manner? This is a body, this is a sense organ, this is an object, this is the mind, these are my likes and dislikes. Before we obtain the knowledge, there must necessarily be a volition within to proceed ahead or pursue to obtain the particular kind of knowledge or cognition of that particular volition taking place in our bosom. When we say, I got the knowledge, what exactly is the special feature or change that has taken place in us? It becomes quite essential now to discern this transformation in our mind or heart with all our attention, observation, and awareness or self reflective consciousness, which we may call intuition. There exists an essential nature of intuition, that is the absolute pure being consciousness bliss of the self in every one of us, which illumines all phenomenon like the valid means or doorways of all perceptual knowledge, viz. the five senses and the mind, their functioning as well as non-functioning, the sensations gathered by the sense organs, the mental volitions, conceptions or misconceptions, etc. Activities like pravritti and nivritti, and the three states of consciousness like waking, dream, and deep sleep. Each may be given the nomenclature of Siddhantanubhava, that is, intuitive experience which is self established or existing in itself and by itself, having no dependence upon anything else or having anything second to it. Taking the literary meaning of the word Anubhava, that is, experience with its etymological formation in the manner anu means following and bhava means that which has happened or is experienced. We keep on transaction in the manner. Now we got the perceptual experience. Now we got the experience of hunger. Now we got the experience of certainty or conviction, etc., etc. Thus, what accrue at the end of these transactions we may call phalanubhava, that is the experience or enjoyment of the fruit or result. As this experience or enjoyment is the resultant or fruit of a particular valid means or doorway of knowledge, pramana, it can also be called pramiti or avagati. Just like when a matchstick is scratched against a rough surface, the fire manifests instantly and burns. Although this anubhava, that is intuitive experience, manifests apparently at the end of the function of its respective valid means, pramana, in truth, it is not in the least an experience or anubhava which has arisen or is born afresh as resultant fruit or effect. For our Atman or self alone, who is essentially of an innate nature of pure absolute being consciousness bliss, is perforce the Anubhava, which apparently is experienced as a resultant fruit by all of us, in order to indicate that it is indeed an ever existing, self evident, or self established absolute or plenary consciousness or awareness. In Vedantic parlance, this reality of intuition is called Anubhuti, Shuddha Chaitanya. It is keenly observed there does not exist any object or phenomenon whatsoever which is not related to this intuitive experience. To say that this exists in relationship with our innate intuitive experience, that is pure consciousness, has perforce to take place, for everything is pervaded by this intuition, just like space pervades everything in it, and thereby the existence of anything means the latter's existence in space alone. Similarly, this pure consciousness or Chaitanya is the substratum for any percept or concept. For this reason alone, the scripture states this fact in the following words. This is a shloka from Swara Upanishad. The purport of this statement is one and one only Deva, that is deity, who is of the essential Brahma. Nature of brilliance lurks inside all creatures from the four-headed creator god Brahma down to the immovable pillar. He is pervading everything. He is the innermost Atman or pure being of every object or entity, being the presiding principle which supervises the dispensation of all fruits of actions. He alone is the pure existence at the very core of all beings and objects. He perceives everything directly, intuitively, without any mediate means. He is of the essence of pure consciousness, one without a second, that is non-dual, devoid of any characteristics or quality whatsoever. Being pervaded by this intuitive experience, that is pure consciousness alone, all our senses, mind, intellect, etc., appear to be Chidrupa, that is of the nature of consciousness, meaning sentient, conscious, just as for the various kinds of fish which swim about either in a river or an ocean, everywhere above, below, to the left, to the right, water alone exists in the same manner. Our body, senses, mind, emotions, feelings, and external object, etc. All these are submerged, so to speak, in this ocean of pure consciousness indeed. Just as the electric bulbs are pervaded in a manner of speaking by the light produced by the electric current, similarly, the function of the senses and the mind are pervaded by this intuitive experience, Sakshi Anubhava, pure consciousness, and thereby are associated with the reflection of this reality alone, because those valid means or instruments of knowledge in our empirical day to day dealings or actions are being illumined by the light of that pure consciousness, our very core or substratum of our being. All of them are appearing to be full of consciousness, that is Chinmaya alone. Although the knowledge is born out of the senses appear to be varied, all knowledge is of one and the same nature. Just like the light of a lamp inside a house diffuses our out through the outlets of the windows, in the same way the ever established self-effulgent pure or absolute consciousness, intuitive experience or anubhava alone diffuses out through the doorways or outlets of the five senses, the mind, the intellect, etc., and gets manifested abhivyakta at the end of the cognitive knowledge being born or produced through the respective valid means or instruments of knowledge. We presume that an empirical transaction of the type I got such and such knowledge of sound, touch, form, taste, and smell, etc., is taking place. If one keenly observes, it becomes quite evident that jnana, that is knowledge, meaning the resultant fruit of avagati, that is end product of intuitive experience, is not at all caused or produced afresh. In truth, pure consciousness or Chaitanya itself, which already eternally exists and is self-established, gets manifested very highly the medium of the respective sense organs, and this we call knowledge. Just as the common run of people transact in the manner, look, the moon has come this side. When the cloud which had covered up the moon moves away to a side, in the same manner, the common people in this present context to transact in the manner, I got the knowledge of such and such a thing or object. That is all. In truth, if one keenly observes what has occurred afresh is only the change of the respective form of cognitive knowledge. Jnana or intuitive knowledge as such is manifest or rather has become effulgent in the respective form of the resultant intuitive experience or avagati alone, but is not born afresh in the ultimate analysis. To give an analogy, just as by virtue of the green, red, or yellow color of the electric bulb, the light inside appears to have assumed the various colors of outer covering. In the same manner, in the case of the specific type of knowledge, especially of the type, this is the knowledge of smell, this is the knowledge of taste, etc. The specific forms of the respective functions of the senses, mind, intellect, etc., and their resultant assumed forms of knowledge or consciousness are superimposed on the substratum of jnana savrupa. That is the very essential nature or fountainhead of pure consciousness or intuitive experience. This is the secret of all knowledge indeed. One should not get deluded that these special forms of knowledge are themselves the real forms of Atma, that is pure consciousness itself. This truth is indicated by the scriptures in the statement. uh, the purport of this scriptural text is the world remaining unmanifest, avektika, in states like susupti, that is deep sleep, and parlaya, that is dissolution, etc., gets separated or spread out as names and forms in the waking state and creation, etc. The conglomeration of means of action and actions, karya, karna, sanghata, which all of us have been endowed with in the form of our body, senses, and mind, is a mutation alone of this unmanifest primordial matter, avakrita prakriti. Indeed, in the external stateless Atma, because of the difference in forms or appearances caused by the manifestation and unmanifestation of names and forms which are projected or superimposed by avidya. The different states of consciousness are appearing. Atma, that is the self, who was first existing by and unto himself, appears to have entered into the manifest world. This should be reckoned in the same manner as in the example of space, which first existed as empty mere space alone in the house of a potter, and itself later on appeared separately or differently as the pot space, pitcher space, lid space, etc. Although these different kinds of conglomerations of our body, senses, mind, etc., are born in Atma alone, who is eternally existing and is of the essential nature of pure consciousness, intuitive experience. That self-consciousness, Atma Chaitanya, just as space appears to have entered inside the pot, the pitcher, etc., in the same manner appears to have entered into these different conglomerations. In fact, of pure consciousness, Chaitanya having entered into pervading the conglomerations appears to have us in two kinds. Number one, just as the various razors that a barber has kept in his bag are separate or distinct, in the same way the pure consciousness appears to have entered into the conglomerations in the form of separate distinct consciousness or knowledge in distinct places too. Just as fire that has entered into or pervaded the whole of piece of firewood in an unmanifested potential form, pure consciousness seems to have engulfed the various conglomerations in a genus form too. The intellect, the mind, the senses, the body, in the conglomeration of all these parts or varied phenomena, pure consciousness has pervaded in the form of a genus, as also it appears in each one of those phenomena or parts in a particular or distinct form or aspect to boot. As to how pure consciousness manifests itself in a particular or distinct form in our conglomeration of the body, the senses, the mind, etc., is evident from the statement of the common people that by virtue of the functioning of prana, that is the vital force, a jiva, that is a soul, is said to be alive. If he is speaking, they say he is a speaker. In the same manner, when he is seeing, he is said to be a seer. While hearing, he is called a hearer or listener. While discriminating or reasoning out, he is called a discriminator or deliberator, etc. As in the illustration already mentioned, among the three electric bulbs that exist in one particular room, one may appear to be green, a second one may appear to be yellow, and the third may appear to be red. Although apart from these three particular forms, pure electric light pervades the whole of the room, nay, the whole of the house in its unmanifested or genus form, that is, electric light is perceptible to us only in the particular forms through those colored bulbs which are the doorways, so to speak, for the genus of the electric light alone. In the same manner, our essential nature of pure being or pure consciousness, by virtue of its association, as it were, with each adjunct of a sense organ, is manifesting itself in the particular functions or actions seen or perceived in the various parts of the conglomerations, namely seeing, hearing, reasoning, etc. If we reckon that these particular forms are themselves our essential nature, then our knowledge becomes incomplete or restricted. If a person is knowing the various ragas, that is, tunes in music, it may be said that the power of his ears is subtle or keen. If he is singing well, he may be called an exponent of music or excellent musician. In the same way, by virtue of his manual skill in painting, he may be called an artist, and if he is skillful in making carpentry goods, we may think he is a good carpenter. In the same manner, we may call a person who is skilled in various jobs a potter, painter, weaver, druggist, oil technologist, scientist, etc., according to the job or profession that he pursues. In all these cases, we may think that he is proficient in the respective jobs indeed, but will it be proper to think that each one of those skills is complete or consummate, essential nature? Never. Therefore, to cognize or reckon our essential nature of pure being consciousness bliss, to wit, the genus of our totality of being, to be restricted or confined to the particular percept or concept like seeing, hearing, smelling, touching, feeling, thinking, etc. In other words, the species or part function restricted to a sense organ as well as the psychic functions will be tantamount to incomplete or imperfect knowledge. This latter restricted mediatory imperfect knowledge alone is called avidya or adhyasa, that is misconceived knowledge in Vedantic parlance. In that case, now can we really cognize our complete, consummate, or perfect essential nature of pure absolute being consciousness bliss of Brahma or Atma? The answer is because of the reason that our core of being is pure consciousness, that is, the eternally established essential nature of intuitive experience as pure consciousness being, which we have taken pains to describe in all sorts of ways so far, and which in truth has pervaded all these particular empirical knowledge of percepts and concepts, and hence is all pervasive, subsuming and consuming as it were everything that is perceived or conceived by our senses or the mind. Respectively, we have to perforce cognize or intuit as the ultimate reality so as to culminate in our intuitive experience of the form of this alone is our Atma, that is the Self. In fact, that form or nature of intuitive experience herefore pervades and subsists as it were in all particular empirical forms, to wit, in that one plenary intuition all these particular varied forms are subsumed and sublated by, for that reason alone, the I notion, which is the basic and the priori cognitive form of Atma, that is the self, Atma pratyaya, exist or rather persist in all the particular forms in the manner I am smelling, I am hearing, I am seeing, I am touching, and I am tasting, etc. As Sri Ramana Maharshi has stated, this basic I thought is behind or is the substratum of every other thought form in our day-to-day dealings. That is, in all our waking transactions, this I thought persists. And similarly, by an analogous intuitive reasoning, we can cognize that the I thought persists throughout the dream transaction. Although the particular forms, each being different from the other, are distinct, the genus from subsumes in itself all the particular forms, just as a person who is the search of an ox attempts to find it out by the footmarks or pugs of that animal alone left behind on the ground. Similarly, by means of the signs or marks of the cognitive form of Atma, which has accompanied constantly, as it were everywhere in the manner I, alone we must need cognize our essential nature of pure transcendental being consciousness bliss. For this reason alone, Sri Ramana Maharshi used to ask his votaries to trace back the rising point or source of this basic, persistent I thought in us. His query, "Who am I?" thus became world famous in spiritual circles and pertains to this above dissertation. Now let us consider as to what exactly is meant by Brahmavidya, that is the self-knowledge. The scripture has stated Brahma alone existed at first in the beginning before creation. Indeed, then it cognized itself in the manner I am Brahma. Thereafter, it becomes everything because we are thinking or rather misconceiving that we have to know objectively that is Brahma, and for that reason we are trying to search for it alone. We are arguing in the manner to see that Brahma is in fact an impossible task. There is no valid means whatsoever available for cognizing it. The purport behind the scriptural statement is even now, that is, even before cognizing or intuiting it, that is Brahma or Atma, we are all Brahma alone. In that case, what is meant by saying that it is Brahma should be known or cognized. Our Atma, self alone, should be cognized or intuited as Brahma. Just as it is explained above that I alone am Brahma, to intuit or cognize our essential nature of pure being consciousness bliss as Atma, self, who is all pervading as Brahma alone is called Brahmavidya. If this Brahman, if this Brahma is intuited, nothing else which is to be cognized or known remains. We alone would become, in a manner of speaking, everything. Now, this is a shloka from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. It means whichever deity cognized that truth or reality, he alone became that. Similarly, among the rishis and man too, Rishi Vamadeva thus established in that reality, saw and declared, I have verily become Manu, the sun also. We must give up the individualistic knowledge of the type I am such and such a person. The knowledge of the type I am a deity, I am a rishi or a sage, I am a man is an incomplete, finite, and limited knowledge indeed. If we have to attain a complete, consummate knowledge, then we must cognize or intuit in the manner I am Brahma. I am the self or Atma of everyone. Everything is the I, the self alone. Merely by that, that is by cognizing or intuiting in this manner alone, one attains the intuitive experience of getting the innate identification with Brahma, the ultimate or absolute reality behind all empirical existence of the various phenomena in this expansive universe. When it is stated in the scriptures that one should attain it by means of the mind alone, it purports to indicate this truth alone. One should perforce acquire the intuitive experience of the type, the ever present or eternally attained non dual, transcendental, that is beyond the time space causation categories. Brahma alone is myself, that is my real essence of pure being consciousness bliss. That is all. One should give up or shed the present deep-seated and innate sense of identification which we all entertain in the form of I am such and such a person, which is projected or caused by avidya, that is ignorance, to one who has become a deity, who has become a rishi or sage, who has become a man. To all of them, Brahma alone is their Atman or self. Rishi Vamdeva attained the identification with the all-pervasive self-consciousness merely by intuiting in the manner I alone am Brahma. Even in these modern times, whosoever intuits in that manner alone, he will attain that very identification with the all-pervasive self-consciousness indeed. The purport this that is implicit in scriptural statements like it should be obtained by means of the mind alone, meaning it should be cognizing by the mind alone. is as a result of the deep-seated habit or practice of looking out through the senses. The mind has acquired an innate hankering after the distinct extroverted knowledge of the external objects alone. The deep dent or impression of the empirical things on the intellect to the effect of the type the senses are known by the mind, which is subtler in its functioning. The external objects are known or objectified by the senses, is very strong in all of us, keeping the knowledge born out of the senses as the basis and piling of a mass of varied concepts we have begun to mutter in a manner of speaking, using phrases like physical science, evolution theory, Big Bang theory, relativity theory, quantum theory, etc., etc. The practice of looking within merely by the mind alone introspectively or introvertedly is not attained by us at all. For this reason alone, the scripture is saying the purport of this statement is therefore by means of such spiritual practices or disciplines like sama, control of the mind, dhamma, control of the senses, uparati, introvertedness, titiksha, mental equanimity irrespective of or in the face of the external good or bad circumstances or experiences. Samadhana, state of a mental equipoise having been rooted in the plenary or unitary experience of the ultimate reality of the self, etc., which help a seeker to recede unto himself towards his essential nature of pure being, consciousness, bliss alone. He intuits or cognizes the self, his very core of being in himself, indeed, thereby he intuits that everything is atman or self alone. There is no wonder whatsoever if in the case of a person who is habituated in perceiving everything from the empirical or mundane viewpoints of atman, that is not self alone, it is not possible at all to cognize or intuit the metaphysical or transcendental reality of Atma, that is, the self of all. Therefore, it would be evident from this fact that people who say or affirm from their extremely extraverted or individual point in the manner for man, the metaphysical or supersensuous knowledge is not possible to attain or obtain. We cannot acquire definite and conclusive knowledge. It is better to give up other considerations and to deliberate upon topics which concern or are related to matters of this workday world alone are not in truth the people qualified for this knowledge of the ultimate reality at all. The story that four blind persons touched an elephant at various places and misconceived in its figure in four different ways is applicable to these people who are not fully qualified for this metaphysical knowledge. The purport of the scriptural statement by the mind alone it should be cognized as it is, being grasped as if in a flash. That is intuition by their minds, of course, because they are immature and incapable to receive the higher suggestions at the intuitive level. So to say, there is hardly any scope. We should remember and fully understand the purport of the Upanishadic story that Narada, who knew all the empirical sciences of the external objects, approached Sanat Kumara and bemoaned that although I know so many sciences as a result of my not knowing the science of the self, that is Atma Vidya or Brahmavidya, I am stricken with grief. There it is stated that Narada followed the spiritual instructions of Sanat Kumara and thereby became a liberated soul, that is Jnani. Similarly, we too, the true seekers, should follow the path advised by the scriptures, as also the perceptor who is fully qualified and acquire the introverted viewpoint or introspection needed for attaining this sacred and superlative Brahmavidya, that is science of the spirit, Atma. This alone is called Anudarshana. By this truth, in the reality of Brahma or Atma, that is pure or absolute consciousness, there is no distinction or manifoldness whatsoever will be instantaneously intuited. What is the method of this Anudarshana? In answer to this question, the scripture says the purport of this spiritual discipline, that is sadhana, is giving up anatma, that is not self. One should establish oneself in Atma, that is the self alone. That Atman alone should be cognized or intuited as Brahma. Brahma, that is the ultimate reality, is readily and eternally available in all of us in a manner of speaking or from a certain viewpoint. We do have Atmanubhava, that is the pure consciousness of the self. For that pure consciousness alone, we have called here already eternally available consciousness with self-reflective consciousness or intuition. Even so, for people who are habituated in perceiving the external objects or phenomena alone, there is no cognitive or intuitive knowledge that within themselves this pure consciousness called Brahmataman ever exists in the form or essential nature of intuition. If it is said that they have kept the sun in a cage and locked it up, how ridiculous it would sound. Similarly, if we say that we do not cognize our Atma or the self of the essential nature of pure consciousness, it would seem to be as ridiculous indeed. This Atma of the essential nature of pure absolute consciousness, intuition, although he is hidden in every being, he does not shine. Therefore, we should first of all give up the deep seated habit of looking outside, that is the common habit of being extroverted. The speech should be held firm in the mind, meaning we must merge all our senses of perception in our mind. Really speaking, mind alone exists as all the senses, but only in a grosser form. In the dream, our mind alone adorns or puts up, so to speak, the forms of all the senses and is pushing us into the extroverted viewpoint towards the external objects, and this is vouched for by our own experience. There cannot be a better evidence or a judge for this fact of life than our own experience. It amounts to saying that the mind, while it can make volitions, propositions, and get doubts or uncertainties, can manifest itself as the external objects or phenomena alone. Therefore, this mind should be merged in the intellect. We should strengthen the decision that the intellect is subtler than the mind, as also being the cause for the mind. It is the Atman, that is the very essence of being of the mind, which it, that is the intellect, has pervaded or engulfed. Just like the water of a river filled in a vessel and lifted up is poured back into the river alone, we should attempt to merge, sink all the mind's doubts and uncertainties in the intellect, which is in fact the basic faculty of determining or ascertaining the veracity of any concept in all of us, that is universally. For this, the capability of introspection, the practice of habit of inverted vision, as well as the mental capacity of ascertaining or comprehending the full import of the Vedantic axiom that the effect is not at all different from the cause, is essential. We are calling the clay itself as an earthen pot or pitcher. Similarly, the intellect alone, we are misconceiving as mind, senses, etc. We should intuitively cognize that this intellect is really not different from Atma, of the essence of pure being consciousness bliss. Apart from the sun, do the sun's rays exist? Although it is true that Atma, our very being as self, is not different from the Supreme Self, that is Paramatma, divide of the manifest manifold world of duality, we should abide in the steadfast intuitive experience to the effect that he, that is our Atma, appears to be different because of the adjunct of the body alone. Establishing the mind in Atma, that is the self alone, should remain still or abide in the pure consciousness, intuitive experience without thinking about anything whatsoever, has this very purport of teaching. Thus, when everything is submerged in the ocean of intuitive experience, that is pure consciousness, we have intuitive Atman alone as Brahma. It is said, just as to see a light, there is no need of another light to intuit Atma, who is of the very essence of intuition, that is pure consciousness, self-established and self-effulgent. There is no necessity of any other experience whatsoever. This alone is called Brahmavidya, as this is totally different or unlike all other empirical knowledge. It is essential to understand this alone in some more detail in the next chapter. So, I stop this video here. Okay, namaste, namaste, namaste.